It's almost football time in Baltimore. Tyler Jones here on Ravens Rundown. With the season almost near, I have my top 5 free agent targets for your Baltimore Ravens as we go past roster cutdown day, the waiver wire. Now we try to figure out who could the Ravens add for those final touches. It's like that extra coat of touch-up paint of some sorts. That's what we're talking about here for your Baltimore Ravens, of some possible additions before the season begins next week against the Houston Texans. Let's set the scene for you here. First and foremost, the Ravens, where they're at, when you look at this roster, it's not a need for starters, right? The Ravens are who they are. But what they could certainly use going into next week is some depth on the offensive line, the defensive end spot, especially the corner spot. We've talked a lot about that over the last few days. We did hear Eric DeCosta say today, the Ravens GM, that he feels like for the most part that John Harbaugh did a really good job of getting this Ravens team out of training camp, out of the preseason on the injury front, especially when you consider how things went the last couple of seasons with the bad luck that they've handled. Now, that is a little short-sighted, I think, of DeCosta's part when you factor in all the injuries they've had at the cornerback spot. But nonetheless, that's what we'll examine today is players that could fit those needs. It's not a glaring weakness of sorts with this team, but it's, like we said, the paintbrush, just adding those finishing touches to this roster. So before we go over the list, I want to know from you, who's a player the Baltimore Ravens should sign that's out there? Give me a name that comes to mind. Before I reveal my list, I want to hear yours. Wait in the comments section. Give me a name or two that you would like to see join the Baltimore Ravens before the 2023 season. Let's start on the offensive line and begin with Tyre Phillips. And Tyre Phillips is a guy that Ravens fans should be very familiar with, as he was previously on this Baltimore Ravens team from 2020 to 2022. He's currently on the Giants practice squad, and in case you didn't know, with the way the practice squad works around the National Football League, you can be on somebody else's practice squad and get signed to an active roster of another team. So although he's with the Giants right now, he could still find his way back to the Baltimore Ravens if they decided to put him on the active roster if they so choose. The experience of what Phillips has had in his career, he's started in 18 games with 34 games played in the last 3 seasons. And if you're looking for a guy, think about this, where the Ravens are at of, the way camp has already gone on and the offense is already installed and everything. If you're looking for a locker room guy of some sort that's been around here before, although it's a different system than when he was here the last time, it makes a lot of sense to bring in a guy you are familiar with, and that can be flexible. We're not, like I mentioned, we're not talking about a guy that's going to be starting. But when you look for depth and guys that can do multiple things, Phillips is a guy that can play tackle and guard both. His numbers, according to Pro Football Focus, I mean, let's be real with y'all. This is not going to be the barn burner necessarily. His grades last year, overall 50.5, pass block grade 55.0, run block grade 53.4. I mean, that's not going to impress any of your relatives. You're not going to bring those stats to dad and be like, hey, look at my report card here. But I'll still say this, just with that flexibility, I think it's worth a shot and could help that Ravens team what they're at right now. Let's go to the corner position. Another familiar name to Baltimore Ravens fans, and that is Kyle Fuller. Last year, I felt so bad for Kyle Fuller, the way that his season got cut short. He was a big signing, right? There was a lot of excitement when they brought in Kyle Fuller. And then week 1, they opened up the year against the New York Jets. He tears his ACL in that game and went on to miss the entire season from that point forward. And this is a guy that has had a pretty good career. 2-time Pro Bowler, tied for the league in interceptions back in 2018. Maybe he's not the same player he once was back then, but Kyle Fuller still has something to offer. And you look at the statistics, okay? I mean, the sample size, we go back to 2019 to find the last really solid season he had. 3 interceptions, 82 tackles, 1 tackle for loss, 12 pass breakups. You're not going to get that, Kyle Fuller, but when we look at this Ravens team and trying to fill that void at the corner position, and in particular with outside corners right now, because Marlon Humphrey's going to miss a couple games. Rock Ya-Sin is still kind of week to week. We haven't heard him officially cleared yet to make his potential return. If you're looking for a guy to step in and be a starter at the outside corner, that's where Fuller can come in and fulfill that role. He's never really been much of a nickelback necessarily, but you put him at that outside corner spot, you might be able to fit in right away and have a natural fit as far as I'm concerned for the Ravens. Let's take a look at that depth chart, by the way. As you can see right now, if, let's just say for all intents and purposes, that Rock Ya-Sin and Marlon Humphrey are not good to go by next week's game, then you're going to trust Jalen Armour-Davis on one side and Ronald Darby on the other. Now, Darby, I was fine with that free agent signing, but I would feel a little bit better, a little bit anyway, if you were to go the route of Kyle Fuller or another name that we'll get to here in just a second, just to give me a little extra cushion of some sorts, if you want to call it that. Should the Ravens bring back Kyle Fuller? What do you think? I hated the way things ended last year. What about one more shot for Kyle Fuller? Y for yes, in for no. Weigh in the comment section. Tell me what you think about the idea of Kyle Fuller. Got a great deal that we're offering Ravens fans here on Ravens Rundown. Our sideline hats are on sale now while supplies last. And the sideline hats that you see on your screen, this goes back to the original Ravens logo from '96. And I got to tell you, I love these. The flat bill style, the ball cap versions, and there's plenty more besides just the ones you're seeing on your screen over at chatsports.com/Ravens hats. So what are you waiting for? Go ahead and rock out with your flock out. Take advantage of your chance to get one of these hats while supplies last. They are going quick, folks. I don't want you to miss out on your chance to get one of these Ravens hats. It can be yours today. Stop what you're doing. Head over to chatsports.com/Ravens hats to get yours now, and you'll be glad you did. Next on the list, we turn our attention to Bryce Callahan. And Bryce Callahan, I look at Bryce Callahan, and it just blows my mind that he is still sitting out there waiting for somewhere to go. Think about this. The experience, this is a guy that's played for the Chargers, the Broncos, the Bears. Last season was really solid. Career high in INTs with 3. Allowed just 370 yards in pass coverage. Pretty decent statistics, if you'd ask me, right? But then now we take things a step further when it comes to Bryce Callahan. He's still not signed at this point. What am I missing here with why Bryce Callahan is still available right now? What does Bryce Callahan remaining unsigned, how does that make any sense coming off the best season of his career at this point? It doesn't add up at all for me. And if you're the Baltimore Ravens, who are so shorthanded right now, why would you not give Bryce Callahan a call right now and see, like, hey, we're desperate. And we know that you can make plays, you can create turnovers, you do a really good job of limiting those big yardage plays when we saw that low number of 379 last year. Why not Bryce Callahan? Look at these statistics here, folks. This is a guy last year that had 3 interceptions, 47 tackles, 2 tackles for loss. And those statistics, you can see him recover well from that foot injury in 2019, to bounce back, to have a solid year in 2020. 2021, his numbers went down a little bit, but then last year, to have what the year he did, it just doesn't add up to me. Here's the one thing I could point to, though. I'll say this. The only thing that I can say of why a reason that he remains out there, or might not necessarily be the best fit for Baltimore, being the devil's advocate here, is that he is a tad bit undersized. But he's still got speed, he's got athleticism, and not too much tread on the tires either. So I look at Bryce Callahan, and the positives far outweigh the negatives as far as I'm concerned of potentially bringing him into this Baltimore Ravens team. Let's stay on defense now and turn our attention to Chris Wormley, another guy that Ravens fans should be familiar with for a couple different reasons. Obviously, he played for the Ravens from 2017 to 2019, most recently with the arch rival Pittsburgh Steelers. And this is a guy that Ravens fans, you might remember that last game of the season when the Steelers and Ravens squared off, and Wormley had that just awful ACL tear in a non-contact situation. It was just bad for Chris Wormley. I hated it for him, the way things went down that way. We're still trying to wait and see what exactly his progress is as far as being necessarily ready to play right now. This might be one to keep an eye on later in the season to see if he's fully healthy then, because he's still, 8 months removed from when that ACL tear happened. But I look at this, Chris Wormley's a guy, 80 career games played, 31 starts. This Baltimore Ravens team, they have the pass rushers, okay? When you talk about Jadeveon Clowney and David Ojabo and some of these other guys on this Ravens team, they have pass rushers. But what they could use a little more of, where Wormley could fit with this Baltimore Ravens team, is that Wormley, if he recovers well, he can provide some much-needed support in the run defense for this Baltimore Ravens team. The Ravens last year were really good in run defense. Don't get me wrong. They were in the top 5 in almost every run defense category. But you don't have Calais Campbell anymore and some of these other guys here. It's going to be a collective effort to replace that. Here's what I'm talking about with Wormley. His numbers, according to the nerds at PFF, included a run defense grade of 78.2, an overall defensive grade of 74.3, a tackling grade of 63.9, and a pass rush grade of 59.1. Throw him out there, another rotational piece. I see no reason why Chris Wormley would not be a good fit for this Baltimore Ravens team. The statistics for you. Last year, in 13 games played, had half a sack, 1 forced fumble. We mentioned how well he is in run defense, but you go back to 2021, and he was a sack guy as well with 7 sacks, 1 forced fumble, 6 tackles for loss, and 50 tackles. Watch out. Chris Wormley will be a guy to keep an eye on, whether it's now or potentially later on, depending on how that ACL recovers there. I got a question for the folks out there. Before we get to our final name on the list, open-ended question, no wrong answers. I want to know, who is the greatest Ravens free agent signing of all time? Ravens been around since 96. Who is the name that comes to mind for you? Let me know in the comments section. Tell me why you believe that individual is the greatest Ravens free agent signing of all time. Folks, we're talking about your Baltimore Ravens every day on the channel. We had a heck of a time with our watch parties we did in the preseason. We got more of those coming in the regular season. We got daily news and rumors, breaking news. We're bringing you live shows from time to time. If you're a Baltimore Ravens fan, this is the place to be, the channel for you. Subscribe now and join the flock for the latest happenings on your favorite team. We got you covered. Best part about it, doesn't cost you a thing. You can subscribe now for free here on Ravens Rundown by Chat Sports. Last on the list, last but least, yes, sorry, Zach Bailey. It is Zach Bailey who we bring up on this list of the 5 names here. Bailey currently on the Chargers practice squad, so same situation we talked about like Tyre Phillips, where he could still make his way to Baltimore from the Chargers practice squad. And this is a guy that we talk about of being a plug-and-play type, right, of being able to do multiple things on the offensive line in camp and in the preseason for Los Angeles. He played a little bit of right guard. He played a little bit of tackle. And in 86 pass-blocking snaps in the preseason, he allowed just 1 sack and 1 hurry for Los Angeles. So not a bad potential option that you can get pretty cheap as far as I'm concerned when it comes to Zach Bailey here. And not only just the ability to play multiple positions, but here's a guy that is just a monument. And I know that we're like tearing down monuments these days, but I would keep this one standing because he stands at 6'6", 300 pounds. That's a big fellow right there. That is eye-opening of that type of size he potentially brings to the table. So watch out, Zach Bailey could be a potential option. So to recap, our potential free agent options for your Baltimore Ravens include Tyre Phillips, Kyle Fuller, Bryce Callahan, Chris Wormley, and Zach Bailey. Before we go, what's the biggest need for the Baltimore Ravens? Chime in. Let me know in the comment section what you think that is, and let me know. Also, want to shout out our friend of the show, Mitchell Renz, over the Raiders Report. He is live all day today with Jeremy Chuggs, and Mitch is getting a tattoo. Yes, a Raiders tattoo on his leg. It sounds quite painful. I'm not a tattoo guy, but Mitch is. You ought to go see this for yourself. Now that you've made it to the end of this video, go check out that video. Tell them that Tyler Jones and Ravens Rundown sent you, and we'll see you next time right here on Ravens Rundown.